1990s in Baghdad, a beautiful 18-year-old bride disappeared from her own wedding reception. The groom, realizing what had happened, pulled out a pistol and shot himself in the head. The bride had been taken to one of Uday Hussein's palaces, where she was brutally assaulted, burned with acid, and murdered. Her body, wrapped in a military blanket, was later dumped at her family's doorstep. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was just one chapter in Uday Hussein's systematic campaign of terror against women in Iraq. While his father Saddam ruled through political oppression, Uday weaponized sexual violence to create a shadow regime of fear that traumatized an entire generation of Iraqi women. Welcome to the infamous past, where we uncover Uday Hussein's untold horrors. If history's darkest chapters fascinate you, don't forget to subscribe. Uday Hussein, the eldest son of Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, has been described by those who knew him as a monster, a psychopath, and a sadist. Behind the facade of his official titles, head of Iraq's Olympic Committee, commander of the Fedayeen Saddam paramilitary force, and supervisor of several media outlets, lurked a predator whose brutality shocked even the hardened officials of his father's regime. From the late 1980s until the 2003 American invasion of Iraq, Uday operated with complete impunity, using his position to identify, abduct, and torture women throughout Baghdad. His methods were calculated not just to inflict pain, but to terrorize the broader population. By targeting women specifically, he struck at the heart of Iraqi family honor, creating a climate of fear that silenced potential opposition to his father's rule. Today, we examine the systematic methods Uday Hussein used to torture women in Iraq, not to sensationalize these horrors, but to understand how sexual violence becomes weaponized under authoritarian regimes, and to honor the memory of those who suffered under his reign of terror. The Hunter. Uday Hussein's predatory behavior followed a methodical pattern that combined the resources of the state with his personal sadism. According to Abbas al-Janabi, who served as Uday's personal secretary for 15 years before defecting, Uday had developed an elaborate system for identifying and abducting women. 5 nights a week, Uday would station himself at the Baghdad Boat Club on the banks of the Tigris River. There, approximately 24 young women, all pre-selected by his associates, would be lined up like beauty queens for his inspection. After drinks and dancing, Uday would dismiss all but 1 or 2 women, who would then be taken to his bedroom. Those who complied received gifts of money or gold jewelry. Those who resisted faced consequences far more severe. But Uday's hunting grounds extended far beyond private clubs. University campuses, particularly the Academy of Fine Arts, became dangerous spaces for young women. Uday employed a network of informants, including professors, administrators, and fellow students, who would identify attractive women and provide their information to Uday's security team. One particularly disturbing account comes from a former driver for Iraqi military intelligence, who described how in 1999, Uday ordered the abduction of 2 19-year-old students from the Academy of Fine Arts campus. The young women were taken to Radwania Palace, where Uday maintained a private torture facility. According to witnesses, neither woman was ever seen again. Even public streets weren't safe. Uday would often drive through Baghdad neighborhoods, using high-powered binoculars to survey crowds. When he spotted a woman who caught his interest, his bodyguards would approach her, flicking cigarette lighters as a signal. The woman would then be given a choice: come willingly to meet Uday or be taken by force. Either way, the outcome was often the same. Perhaps most chilling was Uday's practice of targeting women at weddings. According to multiple accounts, including that of a chef at Baghdad's exclusive hunting club, Uday would crash wedding celebrations, identify the bride, and have his bodyguards abduct her. In one documented case from the late 1990s, after Uday left with the bride, His security team locked all the doors of the wedding hall, preventing anyone from leaving. The groom, understanding what had happened, took out a pistol and killed himself on the spot. The torturer. Once in Uday's custody, women faced torture methods specifically designed to maximize both physical pain and psychological trauma. According to former employees and survivors, Uday maintained specialized torture facilities at several locations, including the Olympic Committee headquarters, his Jadraya Equestrian Club, and various private residences throughout Baghdad. One of his signature methods involved branding women with hot metal. According to Adab Shaban, Uday's former business manager, women who had been sexually assaulted would be branded with a horseshoe, creating a U-shaped scar that permanently marked them as Uday's victims. This branding served multiple purposes. It physically scarred the women, psychologically traumatized them, and made it impossible for them to hide what had happened, effectively isolating them from their families and communities. Acid burns represented another level of Uday's cruelty. A maid who worked at one of Uday's properties reported witnessing the aftermath of a particularly horrific incident in October 2002. An 18-year-old bride, abducted from her wedding, was brought to the residence crying. After Uday assaulted her, the maid was called to clean up. She found the young woman's body wrapped in a military blanket with severe acid burns on her left shoulder and face. Clumps of black hair and pieces of flesh were scattered across the bedroom. Uday also employed electric shocks as a torture method. Women who resisted him would be restrained while electric cables were attached to sensitive parts of their bodies. The resulting shocks caused excruciating pain without leaving obvious external marks, allowing Uday to return victims to their families with little visible evidence of torture. Perhaps most psychologically devastating was Uday's practice of videotaping his assaults. These recordings served multiple purposes. They were used to blackmail victims into silence, shared among Uday's inner circle as entertainment, and in some cases, sent to male family members of the victims as a form of psychological torture. For many women, the knowledge that their humiliation had been recorded and could be viewed by others was as traumatizing as the physical assault itself. The aftermath. The consequences for women who survived Uday's torture extended far beyond their immediate physical injuries. In Iraq's conservative society, where family honor is closely tied to female chastity, victims often faced rejection by their families and communities. According to a former Iraqi physician who treated several of Uday's victims, many survivors were abandoned by their families or forced into marriages with much older men who would accept damaged goods. Some families, unable to bear the shame, pressured victims to commit suicide. Others became victims of honor killings, murdered by male relatives to restore the family's reputation. This social isolation was not an accidental byproduct of Uday's actions. It was a calculated element of his torture system. By targeting women in ways that violated cultural norms around female honor, he ensured that his victims would be silenced not just by their own trauma, but by the social consequences of speaking out. The psychological impact on survivors was devastating and long-lasting. Dr. Ala Bashir, who treated women in Baghdad during this period, reported that many of Uday's victims developed severe post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and suicidal tendencies. Some became unable to form intimate relationships or trust authority figures. Others developed physical symptoms with no medical cause, chronic pain, digestive issues, and neurological problems that reflected the body's response to severe psychological trauma. For Iraqi women more broadly, Uday's reign of terror created a climate of perpetual fear. Mothers warned daughters not to draw attention to themselves. Young women avoided public spaces where they might be noticed. Female students dropped out of universities rather than risk catching Uday's eye. An entire generation of Iraqi women lived with the knowledge that at any moment they could be taken. The end of the Devil's Playground. When American forces killed Uday Hussein in 2003, they found evidence of his crimes scattered throughout his palaces, torture devices, drugs used to sedate victims, and videos documenting his atrocities. Yet, many of his victims remain unnamed and their stories untold, silenced by trauma, shame, and the continued stigma attached to survivors of sexual violence. The story of Uday Hussein's torture of women reveals a dark truth about authoritarian regimes. Sexual violence is not just a byproduct of conflict, but often a deliberate strategy of control. By attacking women, Uday struck at the heart of Iraqi family structure and honor, creating a form of terror that rippled through entire communities. As we look at modern conflicts around the world, we see this pattern repeating, the weaponization of sexual violence as a tool of war and oppression. Understanding Uday's systematic approach to torture helps us recognize these patterns and reminds us why protecting women must be central to any meaningful concept of human rights and security. The women of Iraq who survived Uday Hussein's reign of terror deserve to have their stories remembered, not as victims defined by their suffering, but as survivors whose resilience stands as testimony to the human capacity to endure even the darkest chapters of history. What other historical atrocities should we examine to better understand patterns of systematic violence? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this exploration valuable, subscribe to our channel for more examinations of history's darkest chapters and the lessons they hold for our present.